builder Janie Pendleton. We are back in the kitchen today where today I'm going to teach you what Pullman bread pans are and how to use one, okay? Today we are studying Pullman bread. Right here, the lid on this one fits great. It's just a beautiful, beautiful pan. You can see the ridges on here. Now the ridges, we'll put the same ridges on the bread. Now if we come back, we're going to talk about the history behind the Pullman train cars and the porters that used to serve you the little wax paper covered sandwiches that you got on the train. All right, these actually have a really excellent history behind these pans, and I'm going to share with you our family story behind the Pullman train car. All right, yes, we are connected. We'll be right back. Today we're talking about Pullman Railway, Pullman Railway cars, dining cars, and the route that they took in Pullman bread. I want to give you a little bit of a history about what the Pullman bread pan is, where the idea came from, and of course how it was used. In 1868, George Pullman owned the Palace Car Company. That is a palace car on rails, which meant he owned a train. That's right, he had a train. Remember playing Monopoly and they had the Reading Railroad and the B&O Railroad and all that? Well, Pullman had Pullman cars. And on the cars they attached to the railroad, one of those were family parlors, sleeping units, and the first dining cars. So imagine going down the railroad in the railway, hearing the chug chug woo woo of the train, tooting its horn as it passed different railroad stations, people getting off and on. Picture yourself as a little child waving down at some of the people on the platform. And imagine then too, an African-American, a porter, an African-American porter, walking down the aisle in his long apron and offering you a Pullman sandwich, a Pullman breaded sandwich, wrapped in beeswax honey fabric with a little button, and the little fabric, which of course with beeswax on it would keep you from, if you spilt anything or anything. They were reusable. I mean, just think of it, fast food on a train, like fast food today. This is where we get the idea of our waxed paper, throwaway papers, I mean the little wax papers that you get on your hamburgers and things today. That's where this comes from. And it's just a very exciting time because they used beeswax and oils, and they had these cloths and they could wash them in cold water and reuse them over and over again. So they had the little wood buttons on there with string, and you unfolded this waxed piece of cotton fabric, and on your lap was this waterproof placemat. You know, it's like you see it at the fast food restaurants today. It's this waterproof placemat on your lap. And these were some of the first places to serve it like this. And they had dining cars, and I'll put a picture here. All right, we're back. The booth sat about 4 persons, so they'd get 1 or 2 families here at the dining cars. And I just remember my father saying that the first time he ever had Pullman bread was on a Pullman dining car. And he was offered a white breaded sandwich, a honey wheat sandwich with butter slathered on it to keep, to keep it moist, to keep the bread from getting wet and moist and damp. And they had ham, real ham, not none of this processed watered down ham you get today, real slices of ham. And then as they went down from state to state, like Nebraska, where they had was famous for their cattle, they would put beef in the sandwich. So they'd get fresh produce off at every stop, fresh meat, and that's what would be on the serving menu for each stop. And they had a menu for each stop. So when they loaded up the cattle, they also loaded up fresh cut butchered beef, and then some was pork and different things. So you ate off the menu according to where your stop was and what you were loading off and on as far as livestock went. So in Nebraska then, of course, they ate beef sandwiches or roast beef and carrots and potatoes. So they had a menu, they had these really long aproned African-American gentlemen who were running away from the slavery down south, and they were employing them as fair employment officials up north on the trains, and they would serve as porters, and they would take you and they'd serve you your food. They would take you to your to the dining car, to the parlors, to the sleeping cars. And I remember my dad telling me that it cost between 2 and 9 cents. So they would go all the way up from Indianapolis to Chicago, or from Pennsylvania to Chicago, and they'd go round trip because it would cost them the 9 cents for a round trip versus 9 cents just to Chicago one way. So the further you went on the train, the less it would cost you. So my dad distinctly always remembered him talking about that sandwich. And so on our next episode, I'm going to teach you how to make a reusable, cold water washable fabric sandwich container, so you don't have to use any more paper. It will help reduce your footprint in the world. And I just think it's an awesome idea, okay? I'm waiting for the fabric to come in from eBay, but when it gets here, I got little fabric with little bees on it swarming around. I just thought it would be appropriate. And I'm going to teach you how to melt the beeswax, how to make this simple project, and then you too can have waterproof mats for you and your family whenever you go on a picnic, a car ride, travel ride. It's just a really great way and a really cute way to pack a little family dinner. Now, when they got these Pullman sandwiches, know that they were baked in a special pan. And I'm going to show you a picture of that pan here. All right, we're back. That's my Pullman sandwich pan. Now, the bread made perfect, basically crustless square bread, and it was perfect for slicing meat on. And like I said, it slathered that butter on there to keep that bread from getting wet or soggy. Nobody wants a soggy sandwich, and they had to, like today, they had to make them up. So putting bread and putting butter on the bread to keep the sandwich moist before you put on the mayo or mustard or anything else. We got that idea from back then. You know, they've been doing this a long time. Now, the reason why they did this was it kept the bread from having a crown, and it also kept the moisture in, and it kept this loaf very nice crumb, a very fine crumb, a very nice soft texture. And so they were noted for their sandwiches and their bread. I mean, this was a conversation among everyone in the dining car. This is why they added the dining car, the Pullmans did, because they were well known for their Pullman bread, for their Pullman bread loaves, and for that perfectly sliced bread every time. And so that's what we're teaching you today. We're going to teach you how to make my honey white version of that. Okay. Other things that they served was Vienna toast, dry toast, milk toast. Have you ever had milk toast? It's where my mother learned to make milk toast. And yes, I have been on a train. I was on a train when I was in kindergarten. My mother and I went on a train ride together through Indianapolis up to Chicago and back. Might have been to Terre Haute, Indiana and back. I'll have to ask my mother. I'm sure she'll remember. Like I said, I was only in kindergarten, but I remember the train ride. I remember going through the tunnels. And it was just sitting here getting jerked side to side like this. I just remember getting moved like this the whole time. But it was probably one of the most favorite things I'd ever done as far as field trips go in school. And our teacher wanted us to do this for the same reasons my husband's mother wanted him to do it. It was going to be their last chance to maybe take a train ride, for the public to be on a train. And so that's the same reason as John went on his first and only train ride. And I've been on one and only train rides. But we both agreed it was a blast. And we all got served lunch on the train. And you could have your toast buttered and milk toast. My mother still makes me milk toast. You heat up your milk, you pour it over toast, very well toasted bread with a little bit of cinnamon, sugar, and nutmeg. And it is a treat. It is such a treat. You have to try it. Matter of fact, one day I'll make it for you and I'll show you. It is such a treat. Leave me a comment below and let me know. Have you ever had milk toast? And how do you make it? And I think she put a little butter in it as well. I just remember though that the milk toast always settled my stomach from the nutmeg that she put in it. The nutmeg and the cinnamon would settle my stomach. And that's when I usually got it when I was a little sick. I would complain of tummy aches just to get milk toast. Now, the Pullman train car was called Delmonico. Delmonico was the dining car, the first dining car that George Pullman made in 1838. And Delmonico was named after a restaurant in New York. the Delmonico restaurant in New York. I don't know if it's still open to this day. You might, if you live in New York, let me know, or if you've ever been there, let me know. I'll have to look that up. But I do know that the Delmonico was named after a restaurant in New York City. Now imagine the tables in this Pullman train. They were adorned with white linens, finest of crystal. And you can imagine the water shaking and doing this along the whole train ride, but you know, being jerked around here and there. But they had the best white china, anything like you'd see today in a 4 or 5-star hotel restaurant. This is what you would see in the Pullman train cars. It was the la creme of the la creme. The French term for the Pullman pan is called, now the French term, and my daughter told me this because she speaks fluent French, and she's been to France, and she has chefed in France, and so I made sure I was saying it right. So Jasmine, if I get it wrong, if I butcher this, it's only because I'm not used to speaking French. But it's called pain de mie. Pain de mie. And, okay, and my bread is just about ready. Just about ready, another 2 minutes. Imagine having this dining experience on a train today. It must have been a really fun trip. I mean, they made it fun. For somebody who had to be on such a harsh, body-jerking ride for hours upon hours. And it ran all the way from New York, Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C., all the way over there, all the way up to Chicago, across Nebraska, all the way out to Oregon. So, and this brings us to the Pendletons. It's my understanding that they did business with the Pendleton woolen mills. So that was very interesting to find out, and that they would bring the textiles back to the fashion industry, back into Chicago and New York. So that was fun. So we've done business with that family, George Pullman and his family, and with that train, that railroad. So that was fun to learn. So the Pendleton family has ridden a lot. Now, of course, John's dad died at 93, and that was last year that he died. So I never got a chance to ask him about it because I didn't know to ask him. So, but I do remember my dad taking the train rides, and I do remember his stories about him and his mother being on the train rides together. My dad would have been about 8 or 9 years old. So great food service, simple menus, and this is the stuff that great stories are made of today. Imagine cattle rustlers waving at you in their cowboy outfits while you're waving back to them off the side of the train. Drinking and sipping your milk or coffee and just looking out and waving at the people in their big fancy 1938 hats. You know, I mean, the 1838. Go look up how people dressed in 1838. I can just picture the men looking at their pocket watches from the railway, seeing if the train's on time. You know, they literally had brochures to tell you how you were to dress and how you were to watch your pocketbooks and watch your coins, because the butcher boys would steal them. You know, today we have pickpockets. Back then they had the butcher boys. So, I mean, things like that. It's very exciting stories to hear my father tell. You know, he was told to keep his wallet and his change in his front pocket, not in the back pocket, because they would cut your bottom pocket and slip your wallet and your money bag right out underneath your back pocket. They still do that today. Today, Pullman bread is still considered the crown jewel of sandwich bread. And there's only really one way you can get it if they're not making it at a restaurant, and that means you've got to make it. So come along on this train ride today with us. We're not derailing, but we're going to stop off at Janie's Kitchen on our little homestead, and we're going to show you how I make my version of the Pullman bread. And I've done some adapting to it because the Pullman bread pans they had weren't as long as the 13-inch. They had the 9-inch ones. Mine's 13 inches. I had to make that adjustment. So it's going to be fun to make sure my first loaf here, because my other pans were all 9 inches. But the ones I got from the Pullman families, that factory, the USA factory, they gave them to me they normally sell for $27.99 for one, but I was able to get 2 for under 20. So, you know, there's some good deals out there. It's also in who you know, I guess. But I'm going to bring up this old recipe and the way they used to make the wax napkins. I'm going to bring all that back to you this week on our little homestead. So come get off the train with me now at this stop, our little homestead. Let's go find out how to make Pullman train dining car bread. How did they do it? And you're going to see why it was so famous. A very fine crumb, a very soft, delicate texture, and this bread can be sliced pretty thin. So if you're counting calories and carbs, this is a good way to make homemade bread. You know what's in it because you're making it. You control how sweet it is. You can control it, okay? You don't have to use regular table sugar for this. After you proof your yeast or after you get it going, you can actually add a little bit of Splenda or something else or some honey. You can exchange out the honey for the rest of the sugars. All right, so come along for the ride. We're going to teach you how to make Pullman honey white bread. Now this is my adaptive part of the recipe. Trust me, the original recipe was for white bread. I made it honey white, and I made it a little sweeter because that's what John and I like. That's what we would normally buy at the store if we were at the store. So you only want to make what you know you're going to eat, because this is a 13-inch loaf. It's going to make almost 2 dozen sandwiches, to give you an idea. It's a lot, and it makes great French toast, great toasted cheese sandwiches. I think my dough's calling me. I believe it's done. All right, well, let's get started.